Genevieve Caldwell never believed in monsters until she sold her soul to one. Standing in the glass-walled office of Blackwood Enterprises, she thought the contract was simple. 1 year of a fake marriage in exchange for her father's life-saving surgery. But ink wasn't the only thing binding her to Roman Blackwood. A centuries-old curse demanded a blood sacrifice, and by the time she realized the man in the bespoke suit was a wolf in king's clothing, it was too late to run. Her heart belonged to the Alpha. But her life? That was the payment due. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Genevieve Caldwell stood under the awning of Sal's diner, watching the water hammer against the cracked pavement. In her hand, the paper of the eviction notice was already damp, the red ink bleeding into the white like a fresh wound. 30 days, she whispered, the taste of stale coffee and panic bitter in her throat. 30 days to find $5,000. And that was just for the apartment. It didn't touch the mountain of medical bills sitting on the kitchen counter for her father, Arthur. Since the stroke, he was a ghost of himself, and the state-funded care facility was threatening to discharge him if the arrears weren't cleared by Friday. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. It was a restricted number. Miss Caldwell. The voice was female, crisp, and terrifyingly efficient. This is Victoria Graves from Blackwood Enterprises. Mr. Blackwood has reviewed your application. Genevieve frowned. I didn't apply to Blackwood Enterprises. I'm a waitress and a freelance graphic designer. I don't think I'm qualified to clean the floors in that building. Mr. Blackwood is not interested in your design portfolio, the woman said. Her tone clipped. He is interested in your compatibility. He requires a meeting. Tonight, 8 p.m., the penthouse suite at the Obsidian Hotel. Compatibility? Genevieve scoffed, clutching her phone tighter. Look, lady, I don't know what kind of service you think I offer, but he knows about the eviction, Genevieve. He knows about Arthur's condition, and he is prepared to wipe the slate clean. Indefinitely. The world seemed to stop. The rain went silent. What? 8:10 p.m. Do not be late. The line went dead. The Obsidian Hotel was a monolith of black glass and steel, piercing the grey sky. Genevieve felt painfully out of place in her thrifted raincoat and scuffed boots as the elevator ascended to the 50th floor. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. This is a trap, her mind screamed. Rich men don't pay off debts for strangers without wanting something terrible in return. But then she thought of her dad, staring blankly at the wall of a room that smelled like antiseptic and despair. She would walk into fire for him. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. The penthouse wasn't a room. It was a kingdom. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city lights, and the furniture looked like it cost more than her entire life's earnings. Standing by the fireplace, back turned to her, was a man. Even from behind, the power radiating off him was palpable. He was tall, his shoulders broad, straining against the fabric of a charcoal suit. When he turned, Genevieve forgot how to breathe. Roman Blackwood was not handsome, he was devastating. He had hair the color of midnight, and eyes that were a startling, impossible shade of amber. A scar ran through his left eyebrow, giving him a dangerous edge that the expensive suit couldn't hide. "You came," he said. His voice was a low rumble that she felt in the soles of her feet. "You have my attention, Mr. Blackwood," Genevieve managed, forcing her chin up. "You mentioned my father." Roman didn't walk towards her. He prowled. He moved with a predator's grace, stopping just outside her personal space. He smelled of rain, expensive scotch, and something earthy, like pine needles and wood smoke. "I need a wife, Genevieve." She blinked. "Excuse me?" "Not a real one," he clarified, walking past her to pour a drink. A shield, a distraction. My board of directors and my family are pressuring me to merge with a rival company. To seal the deal, they expect me to marry the daughter of the rival CEO. That cannot happen. Why not? Roman turned, his amber eyes flashing. Because the Cross family are vultures. If I marry Lydia Cross, I lose control of everything I've built. I need to be unavailable. I need a fiancé, immediately. Someone with no connections to my world. Someone desperate enough to sign a non-disclosure agreement and play the part for 1 year. He held out a folder. In exchange, I pay off your father's medical bills. I buy the building you live in, so you never face eviction again. And I give you a stipend of $1 million upon the annulment. Genevieve took the folder, her hands shaking. It was insane. It was the plot of a bad movie, but the numbers on the page were real. "Why me?" she asked, looking up at him. "There are thousands of women in this city." Roman took a step closer. The air around him felt heavy, charged with static electricity. He looked at her as if he were trying to solve a puzzle. "Because, Genevieve, you are the only person in the city whose background check came up completely, utterly boring. You are invisible. And right now, I need a ghost." He was lying. She could see it in the tension of his jaw. But the offer was a lifeline she couldn't cut. "I have conditions," she said, her voice trembling. "Name them." "My father gets moved to the best private facility in the state. Tonight. Done. And I don't sleep in your bed." Roman's lip curled slightly, not in a smile, but in something darker. "Miss Caldwell, I assure you, my bed is the last place you want to be. This is a business transaction. Nothing more." Genevieve picked up the pen. As the nib touched the paper, a strange sensation washed over her, a wave of heat that started in her fingertips and rushed up her arm. She signed her name. Genevieve Caldwell. The moment she lifted the pen, Roman exhaled, a sound that was almost a growl. He stepped forward and extended his hand. "Welcome to the family, Genevieve." She took his hand to shake it. The moment skin touched skin, a shock wave blasted through the room. It wasn't static. It was a physical blow. Genevieve gasped, her knees buckling. Roman's hand clamped onto hers, his grip iron tight. His eyes widened, the amber iris flooding with gold, the pupil dilating until his eyes were almost black. For a second, she swore she heard a voice in her head, deep and guttural, saying a single word. "Mine." Roman ripped his hand away, stumbling back as if burned. He stared at her, horror and hunger warring on his face. "Get out," he snarled, his voice changing, becoming deeper, distorted. "What?" "But I just signed." "Get out," he roared, clutching his chest. "Go to the lobby. My driver will take you. Do not come back until I send for you." Terrified, Genevieve ran. She didn't look back. If she had, she would have seen the billionaire CEO of Blackwood Enterprises drop to his knees, his fingernails lengthening into claws, shredding the expensive Persian rug as he fought to keep the wolf inside from tearing after her. 3 days passed in a blur. True to his word, Roman or his assistants had moved her father to Pine View Heavens, a facility that looked more like a resort than a hospital. The eviction notice disappeared. Her bank account balance had more zeros than she knew how to process. But she hadn't heard a word from Roman. Genevieve sat in her empty apartment, packing the last of her boxes. She was supposed to move into the Blackwood estate today. The silence was unnerving. That moment in the office, the spark, the voice, his rage, played on a loop in her mind. A knock on the door made her jump. Standing in the hallway was a man who looked like he could bench press a truck. He had a shaved head, and a scar running down his neck. "Miss Caldwell?" he grunted. "I'm Jax, head of security. I'm here to transport you." Is Mr. Blackwood okay?" she asked, grabbing her suitcase. Jax looked at her with a strange expression, wary, respectful, and slightly pitying. "The Alpha? Mr. Blackwood is fine. He's waiting at the estate." The drive took them out of the city, deep into the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest. The trees here were ancient, towering giants that blocked out the sun. The Blackwood estate wasn't a house. It was a fortress of stone and timber, built into the side of a cliff, overlooking a roaring river. As the car pulled up, Genevieve saw him. Roman was standing on the front steps. He looked composed, back in his pristine suit. But he looked tired. There were dark circles under his amber eyes. When she stepped out of the car, the air shifted. The wind changed direction, blowing her scent toward him. She saw his nostrils flare, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Genevieve," he said, his voice tight. "Welcome home." "It's quite a shack," she joked nervously, trying to break the tension. Roman didn't smile. "Jax will show you to your wing. It is on the east side of the house. My quarters are on the west. You are to stay in the east wing after sunset unless accompanied by Jax or myself. Is that understood? After sunset?" Genevieve frowned. "Roman, I'm an adult. I'm not Rapunzel." "You are in the middle of the forest, Genevieve," he snapped. "There are bears, wolves, dangerous things. It is for your safety." He turned on his heel and marched inside, leaving her standing in the driveway. The interior of the house was a mix of modern luxury and archaic tradition. There were smart home panels on the walls, but also tapestries that looked centuries old depicting hunting scenes. And there were people everywhere. Not just staff, but people. Young men and women moved through the halls with an odd fluidity. They all stopped talking when Genevieve walked by. They watched her. They didn't look at her like she was a guest. They looked at her like she was food, or a threat, or both. "Who are all these people?" Genevieve whispered to Jax as he led her up the grand staircase. "Extended family," Jax grunted. "Mr. Blackwood supports a large community." Her room was magnificent, with a balcony overlooking the forest. But as night fell, the isolation set in. She felt the heavy silence of the house pressing down on her. Around midnight, unable to sleep, she crept out of her room. She needed water, and the carafe on her nightstand was empty. She remembered seeing a kitchen on the main floor. The hallways were dark. Moonlight spilled through the skylights, casting long, skeletal shadows. She reached the top of the stairs and froze. Voices were drifting up from the foyer below. "It's suicide, Roman. She's human." Ideally, the voice was female, sharp and angry. "I know what she is, Lydia," Roman's voice replied, sounding exhausted. Genevieve held her breath. "Lydia, the rival CEO's daughter." She peeked over the railing. Roman was standing by the front door, facing a striking woman with platinum blonde hair and a red trench coat. The woman radiated hostility. "You felt the bond," Lydia hissed. "Don't deny it. The whole pack can smell it on you. You imprinted on a human, a fragile, breakable human." "That is none of your business," Roman growled. "It is my business." Lydia stepped closer, her eyes flashing, literally flashing red in the dim light. "The treaty requires the Alpha to mate with a wolf of noble blood. If you try to claim her, the Council will intervene. And you know the prophecy, Roman. The heart of the king's mate shall be the key to the cage. If she is your mate, she is walking around with a target on her back the size of the moon." "She is not my mate," Roman shouted, the sound echoing off the stone walls. "She is a contract, a business arrangement, I will not claim her. I will not mark her. And once the year is up, she leaves." Lydia laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "You think you can fight biology? You think you can fight the moon goddess? You'll kill her, Roman. If the council doesn't rip her throat out first, your own nature will. You'll lose control. You always do." Roman grabbed Lydia by the throat. It happened so fast, Genevieve barely saw him move. He slammed her against the door, his face inches from hers. A low, vibrating growl filled the air, so deep it rattled the window panes. "Touch her," Roman whispered, his voice sounding like gravel grinding together. "And I will wipe the crosspack off the face of the earth." Lydia choked, clawing at his hand. Roman released her, shoving her away. "Get out of my territory!" Lydia straightened her coat, gasping for air. She looked up, and for a split second, her eyes locked onto the darkness at the top of the stairs where Genevieve was hiding. A slow, predatory smile spread across Lydia's face. "Tick-tock, Alpha," she whispered. Then she opened the door and vanished into the night. Genevieve scrambled back to her room, her heart pounding so hard she thought it would burst. She locked the door and slid down against it. Pack, Alpha, Mate, imprinted. She wasn't stupid. She read books. She watched movies. But this was real life. This was Oregon in 2024. "Werewolves," she breathed into the dark. "I just married a werewolf." She went to the window to look at the moon, seeking some kind of sanity. Down below, at the edge of the tree line, she saw a massive black wolf, easily the size of a pony. It was looking up at her balcony. Its eyes were amber. It threw its head back and let out a howl that wasn't just a sound. It was a song of loneliness and power that tore right through her chest and settled in her marrow. And God help her, her body didn't respond with fear. It responded with longing. The next morning, Genevieve decided she was leaving. Contract or no contract, she wasn't staying in a house of monsters. She packed her bag and marched downstairs. She found Roman in the dining room, drinking coffee and reading a tablet. He looked irritatingly human and handsome in a navy sweater. "I'm leaving," she announced, dropping her bag on the floor. Roman didn't look up. "Sit down, Genevieve. Eat your breakfast." "Did you hear me? I know what you are. I heard you and Lydia last night. Alpha, pack, territory. I'm not doing this." Roman slowly lowered the tablet. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "You signed a contract." "I signed a contract with a businessman, not a teen wolf cosplayer." Roman stood up. He moved around the table with that unnerving grace. "You think you can just walk away? Do you know what Lydia will do if you leave this property? She will hunt you down. She will use you to get to me. You are safer here than anywhere else on Earth." "I'll take my chances," she said, turning to the door. "Genevieve!" He grabbed her arm. The moment he touched her, the electricity was back, stronger this time. It sizzled through her veins. She gasped, and he groaned, his eyes flashing gold. He pulled her closer, his nose burying itself in the crook of her neck before he seemed to catch himself. He inhaled deeply, shuddering. "You smell like lavender and fear," he murmured, his voice thick. "It is intoxicating." "Let me go," she whispered, though she didn't pull away. She felt dizzy, drawn to his heat. "I can't," he said, and there was genuine pain in his voice. "I tried to send you away yesterday. I tried to warn you, but now you are in the web." He pulled back to look her in the eyes. "If you leave, the council will kill you to break the bond they think we have. If you stay, I can protect you, but you have to trust me." "Why would the council want to kill me?" Roman hesitated. He looked away towards the forest. "There is a story in my family, a history. 500 years ago, An alpha king fell in love with a human witch. She betrayed him. She cursed his bloodline. The curse states that if a Blackwood alpha ever finds his true mate, his fated mate, she must die by the light of the blood moon, or the alpha will lose his mind and become a beast of pure destruction. Genevieve felt the blood drain from her face. And you think—" "I don't think," Roman said, his eyes burning into hers. "I know. You are my mate, Genevieve. Biology has chosen you." He stepped back, releasing her arm as if it burned him. "But I do not believe in curses. I believe in power. I will find a way to break this without spilling your blood. But until I do, you are a prisoner in this house for your own good." "And if you can't break it?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Roman looked at her, his face a mask of grim determination. "Then I will die before I let them touch you." Suddenly, the front doors burst open. Jax stumbled in, bleeding from a gash on his forehead. "Alpha!" Jax shouted. "We have a breach. Rogues! They've crossed the perimeter. They're coming for the house." Roman's face transformed. The human mask fell away, replaced by pure, feral rage. He looked at Genevieve. "Run to the panic room," he commanded. "Now!" "Roman, go!" He turned toward the door and roared, a sound that shook the chandelier. He ran toward the entrance, and mid-leap, his body contorted, bones cracking, fur erupting. By the time he hit the sunlight, he was the massive black wolf she had seen the night before. Genevieve didn't run to the panic room. She ran to the window. Out on the lawn, a dozen wolves were charging. Grey, brown, mangy creatures. Roman collided with the lead wolf, his jaws snapping with the force of a hydraulic press. It was brutal. It was terrifying. But then she saw it. On the ridge overlooking the estate, a human figure stood watching the carnage. He was holding a long, silver object. A rifle. He wasn't aiming at the wolves. He was aiming at the house. He was aiming at the window where she stood. Genevieve threw herself to the floor, just as the glass shattered. The shard of glass sliced open Genevieve's cheek, a hot sting that registered seconds after she hit the Persian rug. Outside, the sounds were horrific. Snarls, whimpers, and the wet crunch of bone. "Miss Caldwell!" Jax burst into the room, his face pale beneath his tan. He didn't ask if she was okay. He grabbed her arm and hauled her to her feet, dragging her away from the windows. "The panic room. Now." They ran through the halls. The house, once silent, was now alive with chaos. Other members of the extended family were running toward the doors, shifting mid-stride, clothes tearing as fur erupted. Jax shoved her into a hidden panel in the library wall. The room inside was steel-reinforced, cold concrete, stocked with water and monitors, showing the exterior security feeds. "Stay," Jax commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Do not open this door for anyone but me or the Alpha." The heavy door sealed with a hiss, plunging her into silence. Genevieve stared at the monitors. The front lawn was a battlefield. The massive black wolf, Roman, was a blur of lethal motion, tearing through the smaller rogue wolves with terrifying efficiency. But her eyes scanned the ridgeline on the distant camera feed. The sniper. There. A flash of movement near an old oak tree. The shooter was packing up. It wasn't a random rogue attack. It was an assassination attempt. And she had been the target. An hour later, the sounds of battle faded. The silence that followed was worse. Genevieve sat huddled in a blanket, her cheek throbbing, her mind replaying the way Roman had looked at her just before he shifted, the desperation, the protective fury. The panic room door hissed open. Roman stood there. He was human again, but barely. He was naked from the waist up, his chest heaving, sweat and blood, most of it not his own, streaking his skin. His hair was wild, and his eyes were still glowing that molten gold. He didn't speak. He crossed the small room in 2 strides, pulling her up from the cot. His hands gripped her shoulders, bruising in their intensity as he scanned her face. His thumb traced the cut on her cheek, and a low, vibrating growl rumbled in his chest. "Who touched you?" he demanded, his voice raw. "Nobody," Genevieve managed, her voice shaking. "It was the glass. Someone shot at the window." Roman froze. The golden glow in his eyes intensified until it was almost blinding. "A shooter? You saw a shooter?" "On the ridge. He had a rifle." Roman released her, spinning away to punch the concrete wall. The sound was sickening, but his hand didn't break. The concrete cracked. "Lydia!" He spat the name like a curse. "Rogues don't use sniper rifles. This was coordinated." He turned back to her. The rage in his eyes dampened slightly, replaced by a haunted look. The adrenaline was fading, and she could see the toll the fight had taken. There were deep claw marks raking across his ribs, oozing blood. "You're hurt," she said, instinctively reaching out. "It will heal. We heal fast." He flinched when her fingers brushed the skin near the wound, but not from pain. It was that electric jolt again. It seemed stronger now, crackling between them in the confined space. He looked down at her, his breathing jagged. The smell of him, musk, blood, and that underlying scent of deep forest filled her senses. It was overwhelming. It was unbelievably alluring. "Why did you save me?" she whispered. "You could have let the contract end right there." Roman leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. The heat radiating from him was immense. "I told you, Genevieve, you are mine. The moment you signed that paper, you became my responsibility. The moment I felt the bond, you became my life." He pulled back slightly, his eyes searching hers. The intensity of his gaze was terrifying. "The curse demands your life to keep me sane. But if you die, I will burn this world to ash before the madness takes me. Do you understand?" Genevieve nodded slowly. She was terrified of the monsters outside, terrified of the curse, but standing here, wrapped in the heat and scent of the Alpha King, she realized with a jolt that she wasn't afraid of him. "What do we do now?" she asked. Roman straightened up, the ruthless CEO mask sliding back into place, though his eyes remained wild. "Now," he said coldly, "we lock this estate down. Nobody in, nobody out. And we hunt for the traitor who let them past the perimeter." 2 weeks passed under total lockdown. The Blackwood estate became a luxurious prison. Genevieve couldn't step onto a balcony without Jax or another guard hovering nearby. The tension in the house was palpable. The pack members moved stiffly, eyeing each other with suspicion. Roman was distant, spending hours locked in his study or patrolling the perimeter in his wolf form. When they were together at meals, the air was thick with unspoken words and that persistent, maddening static charge that snapped whenever they got too close. Genevieve refused to be a passive victim. If she was going to be sacrificed because of some ancient werewolf drama, she was going to understand why. While Roman was on patrol, she slipped into the library. It was a massive 2-story room filled with books older than the country itself. She bypassed the fiction and went straight to the locked glass cabinets in the back, labeled Archive. She didn't have a key, but she found that a sturdy letter opener and desperation worked wonders on an old lock. She sat on the floor, surrounded by leather-bound journals written in faded ink. It took hours to decipher the archaic handwriting, but the story they told chilled her to the bone. The first Alpha Blackwood hadn't just fallen in love with a witch. He had stolen her magic to cement his power, killing her in the process. Her coven, in retaliation, cast the blood moon curse. It wasn't just about the alpha going mad. The text read, "When the true mate is found, the blood of the alpha shall turn to fire. Only the sacrifice of the mate's heart upon the altar of the blood moon shall cool the blood and preserve the king's mind. Should he fail, the beast within shall consume him, and he will devour all he holds dear, beginning with his pack." It was worse than Roman had said. It wasn't just him going crazy. He would become a monster that killed everyone he loved. Heavy reading for a human. Genevieve jumped, dropping the book. Standing at the end of the aisle was Elias, the pack's eldest member. He was a stooped man in his 70s, with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. He served as the estate's doctor and historian. "Elias," she breathed. "You scared me." He smiled sadly, walking over and picking up the book. "The Histories of the First King. Roman tried to burn these years ago. I hid them." "Is it true?" she asked, standing up. "Does one of us have to die?" Elias sighed, looking ancient. "The curse is binding, my dear. It is woven into Roman's DNA. We have tried for centuries to break it. Every alpha who found his true mate, it ended in tragedy. Either he killed her or he refused, went mad, and the pack had to put him down." He looked at her with genuine pity. "Roman is stronger than any alpha before him. But even he cannot fight destiny. The blood moon is in 3 days, Genevieve." 3 days? Panic clawed at her throat. The energy is building. You see how volatile he is, how the bond pulls at him. It is agony for him to be near you and not claim you, and it is agony to claim you knowing what must happen. Elias placed a withered hand on her shoulder. There might be another way, a way to sever the bond without death. Her heart leapt. How? It is dangerous. Ancient witch magic, forbidden by the council. It requires a different kind of sacrifice, not of life, but of memory. Memory. If you forget him, truly, deeply forget that you ever met him, forget the bond, the tether might snap. He would be free. You would be free. It sounded too good to be true. Why hasn't Roman mentioned this? Because, Elias said softly, to him, the idea of you forgetting him is worse than death. Before she could respond, the heavy oak doors of the library swung open. Roman stood there, and he wasn't alone. Lydia Cross was with him. Roman looked furious, his jaw tight. Lydia looked triumphant, dressed in a sharp white suit that contrasted with the gloomy library. "What is she doing here?" Genevieve demanded, stepping closer to Elias instinctively. "A parley," Lydia said smoothly, examining her manicured nails. "The council is getting restless, Roman. They know you found her. They know the blood moon is rising. They sent me to ensure you do your duty." "My duty is to my pack," Roman growled. "Your duty is to survive," Lydia retorted. She looked at Genevieve with cold calculation. "Pretty little thing, it's almost a shame. But rules are rules. The king must remain sane." Lydia walked closer, invading Genevieve's personal space. She smelled of expensive perfume and something metallic, like old pennies. "He hasn't marked you yet," Lydia observed, tilting her head. "He's resisting. How noble, and how foolish. The longer he waits, the more painful it will be when he finally has to rip your heart out." "Get away from her, Lydia," Roman warned, his voice dropping an octave. Lydia laughed. "Or what? You'll kill the council's messenger? That would start a war you can't win, Roman. Not in your condition." She turned back to Genevieve and whispered, so only she could hear. "Don't trust anyone in this house, little bird, especially the ones who seem kind. The Blackwoods have survived this long by being ruthless." Lydia pulled away with a smirk. 3 days, Alpha. The council expects a body on the altar. Don't disappoint us." She turned and sauntered out of the library. Roman stared after her, radiating tension. Then he turned his amber gaze toward Genevieve and Elias. He saw the open books on the floor. "What have you been telling her, Elias?" Roman demanded, his suspicion sharp. Elias bowed his head respectfully. "Only the truth, Alpha. She deserves to know what she faces." Roman looked at Genevieve, pain warring with anger in his eyes. "You shouldn't be reading those filthy things." "I have a right to know why I'm going to die in 3 days," she shouted back, the fear finally boiling over into anger. "Or why you might turn into a monster and eat me." Roman flinched as if struck. He crossed the distance between them, grabbing her shoulders. The current between them was violent now, a painful thrumming. "I won't let it happen," he vowed fiercely. "I am the king. I make the rules. We will find another way." He looked desperate. He looked like a man trying to hold back the ocean with his bare hands. Genevieve wanted to believe him. She really did. But as she looked over his shoulder, she caught Elias watching them. The kind old man's expression was gone, replaced by a look of cold, hard calculation that sent a shiver down her spine. Lydia's whisper echoed in her ears. "Don't trust anyone, especially the ones who seem kind." The night of the blood moon arrived with an oppressive heaviness. The air was thick, humid, and charged with an energy that made Genevieve's skin crawl. The moon hung low in the sky, bloated and stained a deep, sickly crimson. A mandatory pack gathering had been called. It was tradition. The entire extended Blackwood pack, nearly 200 wolves in human form, had gathered in the massive stone courtyard behind the estate. A huge bonfire roared in the center, casting dancing orange shadows against the ancient trees. Genevieve felt like a condemned prisoner walking to the gallows. Roman had insisted she attend, claiming her absence would show weakness to the pack. He had dressed her in a gown of deep ruby silk, a color that matched the moon. It felt less like a dress and more like a shroud. Roman stood beside her at the head of the gathering, on a raised stone dais. He looked magnificent and terrifying. He wore black ceremonial robes embroidered with silver thread in patterns of wolves and moons. He was vibrating with tension. The proximity to the blood moon was affecting him visibly. His eyes were constantly shifting toward gold, his muscles twitching. He held her hand in a grip that was almost painful, as if he feared she would vanish if he let go. The pack below was restless. They looked up at their king and his human mate with a mixture of reverence, fear, and hunger. They knew the legends. They were waiting to see if their alpha would do what was necessary to save them all. Elias stepped forward, holding a golden chalice encrusted with jewels. He acted as the master of ceremonies tonight. "Brothers and sisters," Elias's voice boomed over the crackling fire. "Tonight, the moon bleeds. Tonight, we honor the old ways. Tonight, we pray for the strength of our Alpha King." A cheer went up, guttural and deep. Elias turned to Roman, offering the chalice. "Drink, Alpha, the blood of the first kill of the night, for strength." It was ceremonial. Roman took the chalice. He looked at Genevieve one last time, an apology in his eyes, before raising it to his lips and draining it in one swallow. He handed the cup back. He took a deep breath, ready to address his pack. Then he stumbled. Genevieve caught his arm. "Roman?" His skin was burning hot, hotter even than usual. He blinked rapidly, shaking his head. Something is wrong." He grabbed the stone railing of the dais to steady himself. A murmur went through the crowd below. "It's the curse!" someone shouted. "It's beginning!" Roman fell to one knee, gasping. He clutched his throat. Black veins began to spiderweb up his neck from beneath his collar. "No," he choked out, looking up at Genevieve with eyes that were rapidly losing their humanity, the gold being swallowed by an abyssal black. "Run, Genevieve! Get away from me!" Genevieve looked wildly at Elias. The old man was standing back, watching with a look of profound sorrow and satisfaction. "What did you give him?" she screamed at Elias. "What was in that cup?" "Wolfsbane," Elias said calmly, his voice barely audible over the rising commotion of the pack. "Concentrated, mixed with the venom of a silver-fanged viper. It won't kill him, but it will weaken him enough for the curse to take hold faster. It is necessary, child. The sacrifice must be made." Betrayal sliced through her, the kind historian, the doctor. Suddenly, the perimeter alarms shrieked, cutting through the night air. Jax roared from the crowd below. "Breach! We have a breach! Southern wall!" Chaos erupted. The pack shifted into their wolf forms, a wave of fur and muscle preparing for war. From the southern edge of the courtyard, figures emerged from the shadows. Lydia Cross walked into the firelight, smiling. Behind her were dozens of rogue wolves, huge, scarred, desperate-looking creatures. "Right on time," Lydia purred, looking up at the dais where Roman was writhing in pain. "Look at the mighty king, brought low by his own biology and a little treacherous nepotism. Thank you, Elias." Elias bowed his head to Lydia. "For the good of the species, Lady Cross. He was too weak to do what must be done." Roman let out a roar that wasn't human. It was a sound of pure agony. He was shifting, but it was wrong. His bones were cracking loudly, his body contorting into grotesque shapes. The wolfsbane was fighting the shift, twisting him. Lydia pointed a manicured finger at Roman. "Kill the Alpha," she commanded her rogues. "While he's vulnerable, end the Blackwood line tonight." A wave of rogues charged the dais. Jax and the loyal Blackwood wolves intercepted them, and the courtyard became a swirling melee of teeth and claws. But 3 large rogues broke through the line. They leaped onto the dais, snarling, their eyes fixed on Roman's prone form. Genevieve didn't think. She didn't have time to be afraid. She only saw the man who had saved her life, the man whose soul was somehow tied to hers, helpless. She threw herself in front of Roman, shielding his body with her own. "No!" She screamed at the oncoming wolves, holding out her hands as if to stop them physically. The lead rogue lunged, jaws gaping open to tear her throat out. Genevieve squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the pain, screaming out her defiance. But the teeth never hit. Instead, an explosion echoed through the courtyard. Not a bomb. It was energy. A blast of pure, blinding white light erupted from Genevieve's outstretched hands. It hit the 3 rogues mid-air, throwing them backward off the dais as if they had been struck by a freight train. They slammed into the stone courtyard below, motionless. Silence fell over the battlefield. The fighting stopped. Every eye turned toward the dais. Genevieve stood there, stunned, her hands still outstretched. They were glowing. Tendrils of pearlescent white light were curling around her fingers, pulsing in time with her terrified heart. She looked down at herself, then back at Roman, who had stopped thrashing and was staring up at her, the blackness in his eyes receding slightly, replaced by awe. Lydia took a step back, her smug smile vanishing. "Witch!" Lydia hissed, the word full of venom and sudden, genuine fear. The curse in the old journals flashed through Genevieve's mind. The first king stole her magic. She wasn't just a human graphic designer. She was the descendant of the witch who had cursed them all, and her power had just woken up. The word witch hung in the air like smoke, silencing the growls and the crackle of the bonfire. Genevieve stared at her hands, the pearlescent light pulsing in rhythm with her erratic heartbeat. She felt strange. Not just afraid, but connected. It was as if a dormant circuit in her spine had suddenly been plugged into a high-voltage line. She could feel the earth beneath the stone dais, the sap moving in the ancient trees, and most intensely, she could feel him. Roman. She could feel the poison in his veins, the wolf's bane and viper venom Elias had administered. It felt like sludge, dark and cold, trying to suffocate the raging fire of his life force. "Kill her!" Lydia screamed, her voice cracking with panic. "She's a witch. She'll enslave the pack just like the first Alpha's whore did. Kill them both!" The paralysis broke. The rogue wolves, driven by Lydia's command and the promise of power, surged forward again. But this time, the dynamic had shifted. Roman groaned, a sound that started as a pained human cry and ended as a terrifying, reverberating snarl. He didn't shift into a wolf immediately. Instead, he forced himself to his feet, swaying. The black veins on his neck were throbbing. But as Genevieve instinctively reached out, her glowing hand brushing his bare back, the blackness began to retreat. "Mine!" Roman roared, his voice layered with the growl of the beast. The magic from Genevieve's touch didn't just heal him, it supercharged him. His muscles swelled, his shirt shredding completely as his spine realigned with a sickening crunch. Fur, darker than the void between stars, erupted from his skin. He grew, and grew, until he towered over the dais, not just a wolf, but a creature of nightmare and legend. He was the king's beast, a primal form that hadn't been seen in generations. He leapt. It was a massacre. Roman hit the wave of rogues like a cannonball. He didn't just bite, he crushed. He swiped a massive paw, and 3 wolves were sent flying into the bonfire. Genevieve stood alone on the dais, watching the chaos. A rogue wolf, sleek and grey, flanked Roman and scrambled up the stone steps, aiming for her. She didn't have a weapon. She didn't know how to throw a punch. But as the wolf lunged, she threw her hand up, screaming, "Stop!" The air shimmered. The wolf didn't just stop. It slammed into an invisible wall of solid air, whimpering as its ribs cracked. Genevieve stared at her palm. Telekinesis? Force fields? She didn't know, but she knew she wasn't helpless. "Jax!" she screamed, spotting the head of security battling 2 rogues near the fire. "Get the innocent ones inside." Jax, bleeding from a shoulder wound, nodded and barked orders to the loyal pack members who were ushering the children and elders toward the estate doors. Amidst the fighting, Genevieve saw a figure moving calmly through the shadows of the colonnade, heading toward the back of the estate. Elias. Rage, cold and sharp, pierced through her fear. He had poisoned Roman. He had set this up. "Roman!" she yelled, projecting her voice over the din of battle. She pointed at the fleeing historian. The massive black beast turned. His amber eyes, now glowing with a strange violet rim, a reflection of her magic, locked onto Elias. Roman let out a howl that shattered the windows of the manor and took off in pursuit. Genevieve scrambled down the dais, her silk dress tearing on the rough stone, and ran after them. They cornered Elias in the ruins of the old chapel at the edge of the cliffs, the very place where the first king had killed the original witch. It was a place of jagged stone arches, open to the blood-red sky. Elias stood near the precipice, the ocean roaring hundreds of feet below. He didn't look afraid. He looked resigned. Roman stalked forward, lips peeled back to reveal teeth the size of daggers. He was ready to tear the old man apart. "Wait!" Genevieve, breathless, skidded into the clearing. "Roman, wait!" The beast paused, his massive head snapping toward her. He was losing control. She could feel the madness of the curse nibbling at the edges of their bond. The blood moon was at its zenith. "Why, Elias?" Genevieve demanded, stepping closer to the massive wolf to calm him, her hand resting on his flank. "You raised him. You loved him." "I love the pack more," Elias said, his voice trembling. "The prophecy is absolute, girl. The heart of the king's mate shall be the key to the cage. If you live, Roman becomes that thing forever." He pointed at the beast form Roman had taken, a monster driven by obsession and bloodlust. "Look at him. He is already losing his humanity." "He is not losing it," Genevieve said fiercely. "He is fighting for it." "There is no fighting the blood moon," Elias shouted, pulling a silver dagger from his robes. "I tried to spare him the guilt by doing it myself, but the poison failed. So now I must finish it." Elias didn't attack Roman. He lunged at Genevieve. It happened in slow motion. The silver blade glinted in the red moonlight. Roman didn't hesitate. He didn't try to disarm Elias. He didn't try to scare him. The king's beast moved with a speed that defied physics. Jaws clamped around Elias's torso. There was a wet, final crunch. Roman tossed his head, and the traitor's body was flung over the cliff edge, disappearing into the darkness of the ocean below. Silence fell over the ruins. Roman stood panting, blood dripping from his muzzle. He turned slowly to face Genevieve. The violet light in his eyes was fading, replaced by a swirling, chaotic red. The curse. It was taking hold. He had killed a pack member, a betrayal of his own code, and the violence was feeding the madness. He growled, low and threatening. He took a step toward her, not as a protector, but as a predator. "Roman," she whispered, backing up until her back hit the cold stone of a ruined archway. "It's me. It's Genevieve." He snapped his jaws, drool mixing with blood. The man was gone. The beast was hungry. "The heart!" A voice hissed from the entrance of the ruins. Lydia Cross stood there, battered, her white suit stained with mud and blood, holding a handgun. But she wasn't aiming at them. She was leaning against a pillar, watching with a twisted smile. "He's going to do it, Genevieve," Lydia laughed, coughing up blood. "The curse wins. He's going to rip your heart out. It's the only way to stop the pain in his head." Genevieve looked at the beast. She could feel his agony through the bond. It was like a migraine of fire. He wanted to end it. He wanted to tear her apart to stop the burning. "The heart of the king's mate shall be the key to the cage." "Key," Genevieve whispered, her mind racing. "Not a sacrifice. A key. You don't destroy a key. You turn it." She didn't run. She stepped forward. "Do it, Lydia!" Genevieve shouted. "Shoot me!" Lydia blinked, confused. "What? If I die, he goes mad forever, right? That's what you want. Shoot me!" Lydia raised the gun, her hand shaking. "Gladly." "No." The roar tore from Roman's throat. It was human. The threat to her life cut through the madness for a split second. Roman turned toward Lydia, distracted. In that second, Genevieve lunged, not at Lydia, but at Roman. She threw her arms around the massive wolf's neck, burying her face in his coarse, blood-matted fur. She didn't use force fields. She didn't use blasts of light. She opened the floodgates of her soul. She took all that strange, new, terrifying power boiling inside her, the heritage of the witch who had been wronged 500 years ago, and she didn't push it at him. She poured it into him. "I forgive you," she whispered into his ear. The first witch had cursed the line out of hatred. The cure wasn't death. The cure was forgiveness. "I forgive you, Roman. I love you. Come back to me." "I forgive you," Genevieve whispered, burying her face in the beast's matted fur. She didn't fight the monster. She embraced him. Her dormant magic surged. not as a weapon, but as a balm, flooding the bond between them and dissolving the ancient hatred rooted in his DNA. A blinding shockwave of pure white light blasted through the ruins, silencing the madness. The oppressive red of the blood moon faded to silver. When the light cleared, the terrifying beast was gone. In its place lay Roman, human, naked, and finally free. He gasped, opening eyes that were clear amber, no longer bleeding red. "The fire! It's gone!" he rasped, pulling Genevieve into a desperate, crushing hug. "You broke it." Lydia stood frozen near the archway, shrieking, "Impossible! He should be dead!" "Enough!" a deep voice boomed. Jax stepped from the shadows, flanked by the High Council. They ignored Lydia's protests, as enforcers dragged her away to answer for her treason. The lead councilman bowed his head to Genevieve. "We have never seen a curse broken by compassion. The Blackwood line is safe." As the council vanished into the night, Roman wrapped a cloak around his shoulders and turned to Genevieve, cupping her face with trembling hands. "The contract is void, Genevieve," he murmured, his thumb tracing her lip. "So I'm fired," she teased, though tears pricked her eyes. "Promoted," Roman corrected, his gaze intense and full of adoration. "No more fake marriage. I want the real thing. I want you, my queen, forever." "Deal," she whispered. Under the watchful gaze of the moon, the Alpha King kissed his mate, sealing a bond stronger than any curse. And that, my friends, is the story of how Genevieve Caldwell went from a desperate waitress to the Queen of the Wolves. It's a reminder that sometimes the things we fear the most, the monsters in the dark, are just broken souls waiting for someone brave enough to heal them. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of romance, magic, and werewolf politics, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and tells me you want more stories like this. Question of the day. If you found out you had secret magic powers like Genevieve, what is the first thing you would do? Let me know in the comments down below. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a chapter. I'll see you in the next story. Stay wild.